Starting. Okay. Hello, everyone. It's been a while. I'm Omar. For our hardware podcast. And with me is my friend Jackson. Care to say a few words before we start, Jackson?
Man, if there was ever a year to get into the Heisman and to get into college football awards, it's this year because there's more dialogue and debate than literally like any other year, I think. So this is going to be real interesting. I'm excited for today's podcast. I'm excited to see how this plays out. So, because this is weird. We've got some teams that have played one game, some teams that are like have all their games canceled, others that are like dumb. It's just interesting. I mean, I can't wait to talk about it with you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited too because there's a lot of names, a lot of feel-good stories too that kind of creep up into the Heisman race. Well, starting off, then, who do you say are the front runners, Jackson?
I'm gonna have two answers for you. Okay, one answer is gonna be taking into like preseason, like betting odds and all that into account. And then I'm going to do by play. Okay. So first, I think Justin Fields is a front runner if you're taking preseason stuff into account because Justin Fields has less than 1,000 yards. He already has 11 touchdowns. He has the best QBR in college football. He hasn't really had like a Heisman moment, and the way Ohio State's schedule is shaping up to be, it doesn't look like he'll have a chance to have one either. But I think that Justin Fields, I think he's the front runner probably just because his play is so insane. And he was hyped up so much in the offseason. I think that right now he's the front runner. If you're going by off of performance, just for this year, like completely unbiased, which is impossible. But I think Mac Jones and Kyle Trask are neck and neck because both of them have had phenomenal seasons. They're both putting up Joe Burrow-esque stats from last year, which was obviously like the best year a college football quarterback has ever had. And so both of them are playing just like phenomenal. And so I think they're neck and neck as far as like play goes.
Okay. What would you say that Mac Jones' Heisman moment is? Would you say it's like the comeback against Georgia? Because, I mean, there wasn't really like one moment that really stuck out in that game. And otherwise, Alabama's just like ran roughshod over everyone in the SEC.
Yeah, no, watching that Alabama-Georgia game, Alabama won, and they won convincingly, but they did not win because of Mac Jones. Now, I think that will be his Heisman moment just because Auburn, if LSU even gets played, like none of those games are probably going to be competitive. And it's kind of more concerning if they have to have a comeback or he has to have a Heisman moment to win those games. I think versus a then number 3 team is going to be his Heisman moment, even though, I mean, he had 4 touchdowns. It's not like he didn't do anything. But I think that would go down as his like Heisman moment. If he were to win it for sure.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. And then, the LSU game got canceled, or postponed. I mean, that's like it was the prime time SEC on CBS game. That would have been huge for his campaign too. I don't think it hurts too much, but I mean, he won't have that help. The rest of the way though, I mean, maybe he does great in the Iron Bowl, and I guess continues that trajectory. But I mean, I'd have to agree. I mean, where do you stand on the Mac Jones versus Trevor Lawrence argument though? We'll get to Kyle Trask in a second for sure.
So with Mac Jones versus Trevor Lawrence, first of all, Mac Jones just hasn't had COVID at least yet, so he's had more games.
Yeah, knock on wood for that.
Trevor Lawrence got so much help in his Heisman moment. I think he's not even going to step on the field. I think Notre Dame and Boston College is going to be Trevor Lawrence's Heisman moment if he wins. Because look at Clemson without Trevor Lawrence, and then look at Clemson with Trevor Lawrence. And it is a huge difference with that. I mean, it's a C-level NFL squad is what Clemson has. And it is, like, insane what they have. And even with all that talent that they have, the 10 draft picks they're going to have this next year in Cleveland, it still, like, wasn't enough versus a Notre Dame team. And Notre Dame was good, don't get me wrong. But it just wasn't enough. I think if Trevor Lawrence is playing that game, I think Clemson wins handily. and Boston College. Like, don't even get me started. Like, they would have crushed Boston College if Trevor Lawrence had played. I think the drop-off was so big. I think it shows just how valued Trevor Lawrence is. And the best thing that Trevor Lawrence can do for himself is go out versus, I don't know who they're playing next, go out there and throw like 6 touchdowns. And that'll just show, wow, Clemson's back because of T-Law coming back.
Well, I'm going to provide a counterpoint to this, to your point. Like, I mean, yeah, I totally agree that Clemson's a different team, but I mean, there's been some vulnerabilities in the past couple of weeks that have been shown. And even like before Trevor Lawrence was out, like you look at the Syracuse game when they let the, I think Syracuse is 1-6, so the 1-6 Orange hang around the whole game against them there. I mean, the liabilities, like, and like what I've been telling my friends is, yeah, Trevor Lawrence is gone, but Trevor Lawrence doesn't play D-back linebacker. I mean, they still gave up 28 in the first half to Boston College. They still gave up 40 or 47, my mistake, to Notre Dame, because like the liabilities are there. Like now, if the offense completely stalled and looked dead, then I mean, I could totally like see that like indispensable like argument for Trevor Lawrence, which I agree is like really important. But honestly, like DJ Uiagalelei, he held his own. Like he held his own for sure. I mean, scored 40 points. I'm sorry, but
by the way.
Yes, like I wanted to say, but all I could hear is Joe Tessitore in the Boston College game, like repeatedly, man. He like it was like music to my ears hearing that, you know, hearing the name Uiagalelei. Yeah. But yeah, like the defense is
that fake punt was by his son was awesome.
Yeah, amazing. That was a touching moment for sure. But I mean, yeah, like the liabilities are on defense. I think Jackson. Like I mean, like the offense, there's a much of a drop off between Uiagalelei because he was I mean, he's like a top recruit. Like he could play literally anywhere in D1, I think.
Right. Yeah. No, I can definitely see that point too. I think Trevor Lawrence, when he's at his top tier, I think he's the best quarterback in college football. It's a matter of can he be at that level? And yeah, you're right that Clemson, even with Trevor Lawrence, didn't always have the best games. I honestly think that they beat Boston College and Notre Dame handily because Clemson usually has a couple of those games. I remember that Pitt game in like 2015, 2016.
Yeah,
one of those
2016, yeah.
It seems like they always have one of those games, one or two, where they just hang around. And I don't think they have now 3 of them at least if they have Trevor Lawrence for 2 of those. That's my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point.
So.
Yeah, that's a good point for sure. I think definitely like his slate matches up more with Justin Fields because now with Justin Fields with 1 game canceled before conference championships, he'll probably play at most 7 games a year like this year. It kind of matches up with his resume for sure. And it's like, do you go with like the short or the small sample size of brilliance or like the longer sample size of just like consistency like that Mac Jones has?
Right. Kirk Herbstreit yesterday on the College Football Playoff Rankings show brought up a good point of Maryland, and now the game wasn't canceled at this point, but he said like Maryland could be that Heisman moment for Justin Fields because Tagovailoa had played like he did terrible his first game, and then he played phenomenal in the rest of Maryland's games. If Ohio State got in a shootout with Maryland, like that could have been a time for Justin Fields to put up insane numbers so that like put the team on his back and show that, you know, he's capable of putting Ohio State over that edge. I don't know that would have happened, but that certainly is a huge lost opportunity for Fields.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that too. I mean, it is capable of happening, or it was capable of happening now that the game's canceled with having a shoot with Maryland. You look at 2018 when a 5-7 Maryland team ends up going or at home losing. I think it was either like 52-51, but in overtime they went for 2. They went for broke, ended up not getting it. But I remember Anthony McFarland ran wild, absolutely wild in that Ohio State defense. So like they're capable of getting into shootouts. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, I forgot about that game. We could have seen something similar Saturday. Now we'll never know. So,
yeah, it's kind of depressing.
Yeah, no, it really is. It really is.
So another front runner. I'm sure this guy's a people's champion, the people's candidate. But I'm going to talk about. Actually, no. Let's talk about Kyle Trask before we talk about my man Zach Wilson. I mean, I know you've watched every single play. I know you watched every single play that Kyle Trask has played this year. Like, what's your take on Trask's Heisman chances?
So I was putting this together because obviously I'm a little bit biased being a diehard Gator. But I was looking. I'm gonna read this to you. Trask versus Burrow's numbers through 5 games. Trask, 1,800 yards, 1,815 yards. Burrow, 1,864 yards. They both had 22 touchdowns and 3 interceptions at this point in the season. Kyle Trask has a 93 QBR. Joe Burrow had a 91 QBR. What was interesting to me was Joe Burrow had a 78 completion percentage and Kyle Trask has a 69 completion percentage.
Okay.
And that's kind of where the drop-off is, because I was talking about this with a friend of Kyle Trask putting up very similar numbers and against better competition right now. Then Burrow was facing, like, I forget who he had played through 5 games. So it was like 3 FCS schools or something like that, you know, where it wasn't SEC play. Something about it just looks different. Like, they're putting up very similar numbers, but it doesn't like look like, you're not just mesmerized watching Kyle Trask. And I think he has the capability to be the best quarterback in college football, and he's put some like touch on some insane throws to like our second string running back. There was one pass to Malik Davis. I was like, man, that was perfect. Like a foot forward or a foot back, it would have been incomplete. But like, so he has some insane touch and that capability. I'm just wondering if they can squeeze that last bit out of him, if Dan Mullen and Brian Johnson can do that to put him just over the edge, because he's the first quarterback in SEC history to throw for 4 touchdowns in 5 straight games. He broke the SEC record for most touchdowns throughout the first 4 games. Broke Joe Burrow's record of last year, which had stood for like forever. I forget who had it last. So he's obviously like very capable and very good. It's just a matter of like, can we squeeze that last little bit out of him where he just looks like he's just shredding defenses left and right, no matter who he's playing. So I think he certainly has the ability to win the Heisman. I just don't think – I think like Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence, especially with like kind of the preseason bias and there's no real drop-off in play from what we expected, that might not be enough.
Yeah, I think I'd hate to rub salt in the spoon, Jackson. Like, I mean, I did not know any of that about Trask. You know, for me, Trask, like, especially like my recent memory of a Florida quarterback player is the Treon Harris days. Who else? I'm trying to think.
Del Rio and Austin Appleby.
Appleby, even as far back as Skylar Mornweg when Driscoll got – I'm sorry, man. Even Tyler Murphy, too, before his Boston College heyday. I mean, guys like that. Like, so I guess it was like that recency bias, but I think, like, honestly, I think the worst thing to rub salt in this one, I'm sorry, Jackson, but the Texas A&M loss, man. Like, I think Florida, like, people always – they thought about them. Like, any team in the East is, like, an afterthought, I think. Even Georgia, like, in their best years, it feels like they're an afterthought.
They do not have the best defense in football. Like, I'm not – defenses as a whole have taken a step back, but they do not have the best defense in football. So that win for both Mac Jones and Kyle Trask doesn't mean as much as it would have, you know? So, yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, we'll see. That would have been a great moment because Kyle Trask actually grew up an A&M fan and grew up, like, very close to College Station. So that would have been an awesome moment for him to have, and it got away from him. So
I didn't know. That's pretty sad. I mean, especially, like, how rarely you guys play Texas A&M cross divisionally. Like, seems like I remember it was their first. I think A&M's first game was against you guys in the SEC ever.
In 2012, Cliff Kingsbury, Mike Evans, Johnny Manziel, all on Texas A&M offensive squad. Dan Quinn and Dante Fowler on Florida's defense. Like, that was a great game. Go back and watch that if you want to, because that was a fun game.
Hey, man, maybe on a free weekend, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't watch
NFL. We might have one.
Yeah, but I mean, on that note with Trask, we'll talk about the people's champion who's like kind of taking over Twitter and whatnot, Zach Wilson, who people affectionately call Mormon Manziel. And I say this with the disclaimer that our friends of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints want to be called that and not Mormon, so I'll respect that. I mean, I take that name with grain of salt, as you know, it is not what they want to be called. But we look at Zach Wilson and just his stats: 75% completion percentage, 22 touchdowns, 11 yards an attempt. Not just completion, 11 yards an attempt. 8 rushing touchdowns for 30 total touchdowns. But
Insane.
I think the one thing, BYU they've slid up the polls. Like they're murdering teams. They're doing what they absolutely have to against like the slate that they have, and it's a weak slate, honestly. But looking at it, for me, I think Zach Wilson. I think if there's any year to have a group of 5 Heisman winner, I think it's a year like this when you have a team like BYU playing pretty much as full a slate as anyone, and with the guy like Wilson, like really like lifting up to back to national prominence with numbers like that. But the slate is like real. It's been a really bad schedule for BYU.
Right. How cool would it be if Zach Wilson were to win it? And I think we both know that's unlikely. But if he were to, the last non-Power 5 player to win the Heisman was a quarterback for BYU back in Ty Detmer in 1990. So I think that would have been really cool if they can tie this all together and have the last 2 non-Power 5 members to win it. But yeah, no, Zach Wilson has played incredible. Speaking to that first point we were talking about, I have a friend on Twitter that's a Bucs fan. And obviously during that Sunday night football game with Tampa and New Orleans, she just put on Twitter, she was live tweeting the game and put, man, I'm gonna I hate that Mormon. And everyone took it like, whoa. And she was talking obviously about Taysom Hill, and she cleared it up. People didn't really think of it, but I thought it was funny. So yeah, thank you for mentioning that. But yeah, thanks for clearing that up. All respect to Zach Wilson, but he's played incredible. So he's had a phenomenal season.
I think he has 2 things working for him at the moment. That win against Boise State was huge because that's a brand name win. That's as big a brand name as they had. Forget looking back at the Navy game. Navy could have been a huge one, but Navy's in shambles. I wouldn't say in shambles, but they're not what they can be under Coach Niumatalolo. And the other thing working for him is the proud tradition of BYU quarterbacks, where you got guys like Jim McMahon I think Jim McMahon topped out at 3rd in the Heisman voting. Then you have Robbie Bosco winning the national title for BYU in '84 and gaining Heisman votes. I think he was 3rd in '84. And then Steve Young, I skipped Steve Young. Steve Young ended up 2nd in '81, I think, for the Heisman, '81 or '83, something like that. And then, of course, Ty Detmer winning the Heisman ultimately. So I think that tradition and that brand name tradition of BYU quarterbacks certainly helps and kind of gives a nostalgic feeling,
Right.
And he's got 2 games left too, but they aren't really much statement games. It's North Alabama this week and San Diego State, which could be one. The Aztecs could be a statement.
I want to go ahead and correct myself when I said that as far as no preseason bias, Kyle Trask and Mac Jones have had the 2 best seasons. Just I don't know why I'm just now looking at Zach Wilson versus Kyle Trask and Mac Jones. It's the same stats, except that Zach Wilson has 300 more yards than Mac Jones. So I just think that's interesting. I just missed that Zach Wilson has more yards than anyone else. As many touchdowns as Kyle Trask, 6 more than Mac Jones, a little bit lower QBR. But yeah, he's played phenomenal. And that statement, convincing win on the blue turf, 51-17 against Boise State. If he wins it, that's going to be his moment right there. Like you said, that was that's when everyone knew, wow, this is not against a Navy team who didn't tackle anyone all off season. They're actually legit.
And you just look at their slate too. It sucks. Because they could have had a statement game against Army in a game that got canceled, a game that I was excited to see as a cadet. But as well, you have Troy, who's not in their old form under Neil Brown, out in Alabama. Louisiana Tech, who I think they're 4-3 or 4-4 right now. UTSA is at 4-4, and that was their toughest game to date. Houston looking all right out of the West, but they're not looking like a division champ, like a front runner out in the American West. At all. Texas State has 1 win. Western Kentucky's 2-6. But they're setting them up and they're knocking them down. They're embarrassing them, and they're doing as much as they can. You got to respect the grind with Wilson and the rest of the Cougars out in Provo, Utah.
Something I've always said is everyone says, oh well, anyone could do that. It's such an easy schedule. No wonder Tom Brady in New England won the AFC East 19 out of 20 times. No wonder Clemson's winning the ACC every year. Well, if it's so easy, why aren't these teams doing it? Why are they the only ones doing it? BYU is playing at a whole different level. And it's not, it's kind of their fault being an independent that they're not like don't have a great schedule, but like anything you're throwing at them, they're absolutely like slaughtering. So, and that's not their fault. Like that's to their credit rather, that if it's so easy, why isn't Troy and North Alabama winning like that? Like BYU is clearly a next tier team.
Yeah, like, I mean, I agree as well. And like, again, it's pretty much like sit and wait with Wilson. I'm sure he'll get the invite to the virtual ceremony to New York for the Heisman. But it's just like the 2 games left. We'll see what numbers he puts up in the first half against a pesky North Alabama team who, believe it or not, their game against Liberty was 14-0 into the fourth quarter. Or I think it was 14-7 actually, but they were playing Liberty very, very tough against early in the year, and then almost beat Southern Miss. I think something that you're aware of too, Jackson, as your sister Southern Miss too. They're having a rough year, but they almost went to
Southern
Hattiesburg
Miss
and
is
beat
just
them.
a little bit rough this year.
We have a couple more dark horses to go through after Wilson. What do you think about Mike Penix? For me, I was on the Mike Penix Heisman train after the win against Penn State, because if there's anyone that had a really clear Heisman moment, it was the extension against Penn State.
Right.
Amazing, heroic, everything. All that it meant to the Indiana fan base. Amazing.
Oh yeah, for sure. As far as Mike Penix, there's a couple things I want to know. One, in November last year, he had a season-ending injury. So this is an awesome comeback story that he's having the kind of year he is. And then second, obviously the Penn State game is awesome. Penn State is also not what we thought they were. Neither is Michigan. But think of on College Game Day, they're talking about how like Indiana and Michigan is just like absolutely dominated. And think of how like a convincing 3-touchdown performance by Mike Penix over Michigan, like to get them their first win, and like I don't know, in our lifetimes, so against Michigan. So it was like he's played excellent, and I think that Penn State game was obviously like very heroic, but he's just that 3-touchdown performance against Michigan is just something else to add to his resume, because he's clearly playing very well in what is not a very deep Big Ten conference this year. And he like certainly I think is up there like number 2, no question. Maybe not Indiana as a whole is that second best team in that conference, but even with that Wisconsin quarterback that looked great getting the Rona, I think that Mike Penix is taking that second place spot.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. And like on your point about, I guess, like resume wins, I think when they play Ohio State later on this year, I think that game's on the 21st, and I hope it's not canceled. Because that could be a program-defining win for the Hoosiers. Like if Mike Penix goes touchdown for touchdown with Justin Fields, like we might get both of them as finalists, honestly. Because that's just good TV. That's good TV.
Yeah. Hey, you don't have to play for another plane ticket in a hotel room. Like, why not just invite all these guys to the virtual center?
Exactly.
Why
exactly.
not? You know? Yeah.
It's been a crazy enough year. So moving on from Mike Penix, a guy I like, and I'm sure you probably like him too, Grayson McCall from the Fighting Chanticleers of Coastal Carolina.
What a fun team, first of all.
Exactly. I love them. They're fun.
Team. Yeah, Coastal Carolina has looked incredible this year. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, 100%.
The main note I had in Grayson McCall, if you watch like I'll be honest, I haven't watched that many Coastal Carolina games this year, but I did watch some highlights. It just looks like, that's just like bigger and faster than everyone else on the Little League field. He looks like a boss. The only thing that I would note is he needs a game with over 4 touchdowns. Right now, he's kind of capping at 4 touchdowns each game. And if you want someone from such a small school as Coastal Carolina to really be noticed, you need a wow moment that's like some crazy 7-touchdown game. And it doesn't matter if it's like against Northwest Missouri Tech. Like, they just need someone that like they need him to have. Our McCall for himself needs to have like one wow game.
So for me, I got a couple of games I think you can argue being a wow game for Grayson McCall. The first game of the year against Kansas, against Les Miles-led Kansas, and yes, it's Kansas, but it's still a Power 5 team. Still a Big 12 team. Still a huge win for a program as young, not only at the FBS level, but in general as the Chanticleers. McCall went to Lawrence, and that game was weird because it was 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. local time kickoff in Lawrence.
That was on.
It was very, very odd. Like, they didn't have any – there's no Pac-12 after dark. It was more like Big 12 after dark. He had 5 touchdowns without a pick, 73 rushing yards. So 3 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns, 73 rushing yards. Only 133 yards passing, but, I mean, the 5 touchdowns were huge. And then on top of that –
they got the job.
Yeah. You can't blame him. Yeah, exactly. Like, again, it's like what we said about BYU. Like, they set him up, they knock him down. That's who was in front of him, and they did all they could and looked dominant. Like, that game ended 38-23 was not even that close. I mean, it was like 28-0 at half, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was something crazy. Like, you knew Coastal Carolina was going to win in that second quarter. I remember the game he looked at. What a gig for Les Miles, getting paid like $2.7 million to coach a team that no one would care if they went 1-11. Like,
oh yeah, no, it's in shambles.
What a great gig. Yeah.
And then on top of
time in the offseason, I think I'm gonna go and watch that ESPN Plus documentary on.
Oh right, yeah, no, for sure. It looks interesting. Like,
yeah, it does look interesting. Yeah,
it's kind of like when Hard Knocks went to the Cleveland Browns after they went 0-16. But it's kind of that vibe. I feel like.
Yeah. Why not at this point? Yeah.
But another Heisman moment for Grayson McCall, I think, was
Yeah.
Oh no, sorry, my bad. But another Heisman moment I think was against Louisiana when they were ranked, when they took down a ranked Raging Cajun squad on a Wednesday night. Yeah, on the Wednesday night, when he had 202 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 45 rushing yards, and a touchdown. Like, the thing with Grayson McCall, he makes very few mistakes. 16 touchdowns, 1 pick, 4 rushing touchdowns. So I think that's cool. But I mean, what are your thoughts? Like, what are your thoughts on those Heisman moments? I mean, they seem very minor, but I mean, like he said with Justin Fields, he doesn't really have like a huge Heisman moment like himself.
What I think about Heisman moments is, and basically as a whole, like the Heisman as a whole, I think this is a complaint for a lot of diehard fans that get interested in this stuff. There has to be reform on Heisman voting because honestly, I love talking about these dark horses and they are deserving of being talked about. But there's no chance that any of these guys win this just because the Heisman voting system is so terrible where, I mean, you know, my friend's uncle down the street gets a vote. Like, everyone has a vote, it seems like. We'll probably get a vote if we keep doing this podcast. It's like everyone votes. It's a popularity contest, it seems like. One point that I always point to is Jim Nagy, the director of the Reese's Senior Bowl, said the fact that Joe Burrow won the Heisman so handily when Chase Young had the kind of season he did last year just shows no one goes and puts on the all 22 tape and watches like the actual games, like, you know, or like studies them. Like, it's literally just a popularity contest and the media kind of tells themselves who we're all going to vote for. It's just like, that's my opinion. These guys, Zach Wilson especially, I also think Mike Penix, both deserve, of the ones we talked about, especially those two, deserve to be more in this conversation. Coastal Carolina and Indiana are not going to trend on Twitter anytime soon. Like, they're just not it's a popularity contest. There has to be reform. You don't vote, you'll lose it. You don't like log. They should have like some kind of system where you log in your hours and you have to actually watch like I don't know what 24 candidates that are like officially on there or whatever. Like, there needs to be some kind of reform where there's not as many votes. I think like literally anyone can go vote on Nissan.com and it's like the fans vote for like 1 vote, but like it's still 1 vote. Like, I don't think anyone should be able to vote on this, you know. Just my opinion though. I think that like these guys are deserving. There just needs to be some kind of reform.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, there's tons of deserving guys as well. I mean, the last 2 guys we'll talk about, Malik Willis out of Liberty, another feel-good story for the year. And, of course, I mean, it's kind of weird we saved him for the last, but Travis Etienne. I mean, I feel like he gets lost in translation. But starting with Willis, this week, again, another, like, efficient guy. Doesn't make many mistakes, 12 touchdowns, 1 pick. But that extra dimension running the ball is absolutely, like, killer. Like, over 100 rushing yards against Virginia Tech last week, 603 on the year, 7 rushing touchdowns. Like, And plus, I've seen some the most I've seen Malik Willis prior to the Virginia Tech game was on Instagram. There is a slideshow on one of the college football highlight pages, and like, man, there was a run against Florida International that gave me chills, man. Like, he got hit, spun, stayed standing, tiptoed the sideline. Like, he is fun to watch. I think he's the most fun to watch quarterback in college football at the moment right now. Like, bold statement.
Totally. And like the 6 touchdown performance against the Golden Eagles, like almost 50 yards. Like, he's a phenomenal player. Yeah. And like we talk about, like, these guys are deserving to be talked about for sure. But there actually, you mentioned Travis Etienne. There's just a couple things I want to mention. The last non-quarterback and non-Bama running back to win the Heisman was Reggie Bush in 2005. The last past Heisman was Desmond Howard in 1991.
Oh my gosh.
We have these like popularity contests that they are, and was actually the best player. Do you think either Travis Etienne or my man Kyle Pitts have any kind of shot at winning this if it's actually the best player? Because both of them have looked unreal this season.
So for me, I think Etienne kind of wastes his chance. And like you mentioned, Kyle Pitts, man, I know you're a big Florida guy, but Pitts is a tight end. A tight end hasn't won it since Leon Hart in 47, I think, 48 or 47.
And you went farther than I did.
Yeah. Yeah, but like, I think honestly, like, Etienne's chance to like prove to the country in prime time, and it was the most watched Notre Dame game since the 05 Bush push game. He had 18 carries for 28 yards. Like, that was a chance for him to carry that offense. He didn't. And I mean, I think the Heisman Award doesn't take him seriously, like, past that, because I mean, for all that he's done for Clemson over the past like 3.5 years, I mean, last night was time to shine without Trevor Lawrence to steal his shine, without who else? Kelly Bryant before then steal his shine. Like, that's just what I think in terms of Travis Etienne.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I totally agree. I think it's interesting. I don't have anything to add on what you said. I totally agree with that. The one note I forgot to mention, Mac Jones would be the first Alabama quarterback to win it. Seems like almost every school at some point had a quarterback win it. I just think it's kind of funny that there's 2 running backs, but there's no quarterbacks from Alabama that won it. I just think that's kind of funny. And Trevor Lawrence will be the first Clemson player to win it. So you never know. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I didn't know that for sure. But we'll see. I think for me, going back to Malik Willis, I think his big show will be the week after this one, after Western Carolina against NC State. If he can find a way to go 3-0 against the ACC, and they end up like neck and neck with BYU for an at-large spot in the top 12, because the Independents can't get a Group of 5 slot. If they end up neck and neck for that, and like, I think Malik Willis can get some love too, especially with the way that the game is. Like, yes, Zach Wilson moves well, he's mobile, but Willis's rushing numbers are like better, and like, honestly, like, Willis just moves so well. Like, he's fun to watch, man. He's just exciting.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I guess our last point that we wanted to talk about was the Doak Walker Award.
Yes.
Those of you who goes out to the best running back in the country in college football, obviously. And there are a few candidates that you sent me and that I've noticed too that we want to talk about. I think we pretty much covered Travis Etienne. If we're talking about Heisman, he obviously deserves to be mentioned for the Doak Walker Award.
Of course.
He's 121 attempts, 634 yards, 10 touchdowns, averaging 5 yards a carry, even when everyone and their grandmother knows that he's going to run the ball. He's played phenomenal. One guy that you mentioned that I somehow had missed was Khalil Herbert.
Yes.
800 yards already and an 8.4 yard average, which is just like unreal for anything, much less for one player. Man, what a year for Herbert.
Yeah, Kansas transfer from Kansas too. So rags to riches.
Yeah, no kidding. The Big 12 isn't known for appreciating running backs. So ever since Barry Sanders, at least. So
definitely.
Good for him going into the ACC and like just lighting it up. It seems like. Another guy you mentioned, Breece Hall from Iowa State.
Yeah.
Already had a 1,000-yard season. Wait, am I reading that right?
Yeah, I think it's Breece. I think it's how you pronounce it.
Yeah. I was like, wait, that doesn't sound right. 13 touchdowns, 6.3 yard average, 165 attempts. So Iowa State is just like, they're just loading him, like giving him.
Oh, for sure.
Carries. Yeah. I had to do a little double take. Like wait, already 1,000 yards?
Yeah. He's leading the country. Yeah.
Yeah. Brendan Knox, the running back from Marshall. What are your impressions on him?
So I put like his stats are like if you look at the amount of games that Marshall's played, they've played 6 games and he's averaging over 100 per game. I felt he was a candidate just because of Marshall's in the hunt for the New Year's Six. Like as unfortunate as the season has been, they're 6-0. They've had so many cancellations. Had to add the Fighting Minutemen of UMass who are desperate for games. But I just think that's funny that UMass in the span of like a month has a chance to play a role in the New Year's Six race by playing both Marshall and Liberty too. Like if they play one of those teams tough, then I mean, one of those teams can slide down in the polls. But yeah, I put Knox down there. I feel like a lot of dominoes have to fall with Knox. I think Marshall would have to be in like prime position for the New Year's Six for him to be in consideration. And that goes for another guy that I put as well, Ulysses Bentley the fourth out of SMU, who's at 774 and 10 touchdowns for the Mustangs. But he had poor games against Memphis. I think under 50 yards against the Tigers, and against Cincinnati, absolutely shut down against the Bearcats. So I don't think he's as much a candidate now. But in if they catch Cincinnati in the American title game, and he has a big game for sure, I say why not put him back in the discussion for the Doak.
Right. No, absolutely. Marshall has had a great season so far, and that seems to be a lot in credit to Knox. The way he's played. I don't know Marshall's quarterback, but I'm guessing they're kind of running the ball first with this if he's getting over 20 carries a game.
Yeah, they just have a good defense. Like Marshall's a tough team. Yeah. Like they're really a tough kind of like old-fashioned team. Like there's a couple of good defenses in CUSA this year. Like Florida Atlantic, I think they're averaging 11 points per game in 4 games on defense. Like that small sample size, but tough defense.
Yeah.
Their quarterback for your awareness, Grant Wells. I think he's a freshman. He had a huge game against Eastern Kentucky to start the year off. It's Eastern Kentucky on Labor Day weekend, but I think he won like Walter Camp Player of the Week. Had like 5 touchdowns in that game, but he's only thrown for 1338, like a little bit over 200 per game. And yeah, in that Eastern Kentucky game, he had 4 touchdowns and 207 yards. But otherwise, like he's been more of a game manager for sure. Yeah,
no, absolutely. Ulysses Bentley, the fourth, a running back out of Southern Methodist, 132 carries, 774 yards, 10 touchdowns, 5.9 average. Very similar numbers to Brennan Cox, an exact same number of attempts, just an extra 100 yards, an extra touchdown, an extra 0.8 yards per average. So it just seems to be like a next level Knox right now. SMU.
Yeah, and like I said, the same case with Knox and Bentley, like being in the New Year's Six race, are kind of pushed out.
Right.
So it's kind of unfortunate.
Yeah, for sure. One guy that I wanted to mention that has an absolute 0% chance of winning it this year, but I think he's going to win it by the time he's done, Zach Evans, a running back from TCU, first ever star recruit for TCU. Originally,
they've never had a 5-star?
No, this is their first
What? That's
program.
Insane.
He originally committed to Georgia, had a couple personal problems with the coaching staff and wanted to be closer to home. And so he transferred over there literally the week before their first game. So he only has 21 attempts, 1 touchdown, and 134 yards. So obviously had no shot winning this, but man, like I watched him a couple times and he looks legit when he is out there. So I think he'll win it, or at least be a finalist by the end of his career.
Yeah, that's a good point, man. Looking to the future for sure. Like I didn't know TC. Like I think they're improving. TC's improving for sure. Beating Texas.
Oh yeah.
Downhill run game too with Max Duggan running for 4. I think it was 4 or 5 touchdowns this week. I mean, this is a really tough run game out there for the Horned Frogs, for sure. Also in the state of Texas too. Or were you gonna add to that?
Oh, I was just going to add that I already kind of knew Zach Evans because Florida and Georgia were kind of competing.
Right, yeah.
cycle. I saw him commit to Georgia, and then living in Central Texas like I do now, I listen to ESPN radio every day, and the amount of excitement he was getting, like that TCU is getting, you would have thought like the second coming had happened and he was coming to TCU. Like they just talked about Zach Evans so much, and they are so excited for the way he's going to impact that program. They're building that program kind of around a running game now because of his commitment. So I think they're really going to set him up for success.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Yeah. It's exciting. No, I was just going to say out of state of Texas too, Sincere McCormick, who's actually second in the country in rushing out of Texas San Antonio. And it always seems like there's like, you know, all these guys in the group of five are getting screwed despite having the stats. Like UTSA's had a full slate, and they deserve their due out there. I'd like to see him as a finalist, but I just don't think it's going to happen because, I mean, we're talking about a 4-4 CUSA team. But, I mean, McCormick's done his part, 921 rushing yards, 9 touchdowns against BYU. Looking at that, didn't have much of a big game against BYU, but against Army the following week, 6-1 Army, 25 in the coaches poll, he had 133 rushing yards. So, I mean, it's good to see guys in the group of five. Hopefully they get their due, but, I mean, it's highly unlikely.
How many attempts did he have in that Army game? Do you know off the top of your head? Or
he had 18. Looking at it right now, he had 18.
Okay. Yeah. That's a decent number. Yeah. That's pretty good.
For sure.
6 yards to carry.
And then a guy I forgot, and a guy I'm sure you're familiar with, I guess our last really like candidate, Najee Harris. And I feel like for me, I know how this is going to end. We have an Alabama running back on a playoff front runner. A guy like Breece Hall is going to get screwed, even though he's like leading the country in rushing. Like, it's frustrating, but I want to know your thoughts on Najee Harris because he's got 14 touchdowns. Like, he's a bell cow for that Crimson Tide.
No, he's playing phenomenal at Bama. I don't know what else you would expect from a running back. It seems like that they could put my 6-year-old nephew in there and he would get 700 yards at least on the season. So, like, it seems like anyone, it's just like a machine there. So I don't really know, like, what do you expect? Seems like everyone from Bama is playing phenomenal. I mean, I was so grateful. Finally, Ruggs is gone. And that other guy, the guy that went to Jerry Jeudy, like finally.
Jerry Jeudy, yeah.
A terrible two-edged sword is gone. And then now, I mean, he's out for the year, but Jalen Waddle is now the best wide receiver ever. So just seems like they always have someone's always next man up. I mean, he's played phenomenal. Etienne and Breece Hall are the two most deserving, if not Khalil Herbert. Those are the top three I would put just because, like, I don't know that it's to Harris's credit exactly. He's good, don't get me wrong, but, like, he's just got so many pieces around him as opposed to, I don't know, name one Virginia Tech offensive lineman that's, like, any good. You know, like, with all due respect to some, right guard that's doing great at Virginia Tech, it's just like, it's not as much talent around them to kind of build that success. So that's my opinion, though.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I for sure will be rooting for Breece Hall because, I mean, it's something different. Iowa State, too, looking for they're the front runner in the Big 12, believe it or not, because Oklahoma lost 2 Big 12 games.
Yeah, that's true. I forgot about that.
This would be Iowa State's first conference title if they win it this year. I don't want to jinx them. Since 1914. Since I believe the Taft administration. Wild
time, yeah. 106 years. That would be quite that. Yeah. So,
But any final thoughts, Jackson, before we head off and stroll towards college football weekend?
Yeah, I'm good on this. Enjoy what's left of your college football weekend and college game day at the Masters. That's just, I don't know. I'm not a golf fan, so I think that's a little weird.
It's weird, yeah.
Yeah. I've got one, and this isn't the NFL, but this is one discussion question that I heard on Good Morning Football. If you're not watching it and you're an NFL fan, I'm sure they're paying me. 7 a.m. Eastern. It's a phenomenal show. Great discussion question I heard. I want to hear your thoughts. You're an NFL general manager. You're building a franchise for the next 10 years. Who do you take, Joe Burrow or Lamar Jackson?
I think I'm biased, man, because I love Lamar. Lamar Jackson, man. I got a special place in my heart for Lamar.
Right. the way Joe Burrow has played with absolutely no one around him, like T. Higgins being his best receiver, I don't know. I'm leaning towards Joe Burrow.
Dang, man. Why you got to do that to me, man? Dang.
But yeah, I know. It's just, if you're watching this, if you got it through this far on the podcast, thank you. If you did, also please comment your thoughts, because I would love to know. Because I've asked a few different people. I've gotten a few different answers for a few different reasons. It seems like everyone has an opinion on that. It's not as simple as you think when you start, because at first it's like, duh, Lamar MVP, probably, yeah, he's younger than Joe Burrow. Will win a Super Bowl in the next 5 years, it seems like. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. There's a lot of kind of caveats to that question. So if you're listening still, please let us know.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Joe Burrow's done like amazing in Cincinnati for sure.
Yeah.
But I just feel like Lamar hasn't. I mean, he hasn't really gotten a fair shake from like the media.
Right.
There's always the narratives following him. He's still a young guy. They're trashing him for not winning a playoff game, but I got to go with
anyone
Lamar,
who still says he can't throw, like, please sign up for NFL Game Pass and watch that all 20. He's Lamar can throw it. Like, just stop. He's great. Yeah. So I'll say, yeah, but I am all set. Happy Veterans Day to you guys over in prison. At least I get a meal out of it for my 22 months of going to class. So so enjoy tonight and enjoy your college football weekend. I will be watching return of Felipe Franks to Gainesville. That'll be fun.
Yeah, that's exciting. I think
without
this
Sam
weekend,
Pittman, so it might get ugly.
For me, I like watching Notre Dame. I mean, I always call Notre Dame the history majors college football team because they're so important to the American cultural fabric.
Right.
I'll be watching Notre Dame Boston College because get this, the similarities are very eerie this weekend. Go back to 1993 with the original game of the century against Florida State. Who they play next week? A Boston College team. Who they play this week? Boston College.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
It was wild.
In that 93 game, because I'm sorry, I do not remember Notre Dame Boston College from 93.
Oh, well, what happened was Boston College jumps out to a 38-17 lead. But Notre Dame storms back, takes a 39-38 lead. But Boston College won it. They won it as time expired on a field goal. David Gordon, off the leg of David Gordon.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll see. I'm shocked that game hasn't gotten canceled to COVID after one storm that field. I don't know if you saw it. I posted on my Instagram, Notre Dame, the board or whatever, expressed a letter of disappointment for one of their priests or whatever that wasn't wearing a mask and social distancing. And then everyone storms the field 2 days after that. It's funny. But yeah, we'll see. Yeah. Notre Dame, I was proven wrong. Notre Dame looked great on Saturday night.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, for sure.
Ruined my Pac-12 at night because there was nothing. But
no, there was Hawaii.
Any Wazoo or Beaver fans. But, yeah.
But
man.
Until next time.
Your night and enjoy college football. And man, who knows? Maybe this podcast was all for nothing in 2 weeks and it's completely shaken up. Who knows? So we'll see.
Yeah, exactly. We'll see.
College football. So.
Yeah, you never can tell. But until then, peace, love, and soul. And see you next time.